The dust never settled on Red Rock Station. It hung in the recycled air like a constant reminder that this place was barely holding together. 8-year-old Danny Wright sat in the corner of the maintenance bay, his small fingers scratching behind the ears of the most dangerous animal on the entire colony. Scraps looked up at him with dark eyes, making a soft chittering sound that meant he was content. Nobody else understood why Danny loved the honey badger so much. Most people crossed to the other side of the corridor when they saw Scraps waddling beside the boy. The creature had claws that could tear through metal panels and teeth that had once bitten clean through a pressure suit. But to Danny, Scraps was family. The only family he had left since the mining accident took his parents 2 years ago. Roger Hayes found them there most evenings. The colony administrator was a tired man with gray hair and permanent worry lines. He brought Danny food that the boy usually shared with Scraps. Tonight, Roger looked more worried than usual. "Danny, we need to talk," Roger said, kneeling down to eye level. "There's a ship coming. Provision Authority inspection team." Danny knew what that meant. The Provision Authority was supposed to help colonies like theirs, but mostly they just made lists of everything wrong and filed reports nobody read. His mother had called them paper pushers with too much power and not enough sense. "When?" Danny asked. "Tomorrow morning. They're already in orbit." Roger paused, glancing at Scraps. "You should keep him out of sight, just for a few days." Danny shook his head. "Scraps stays with me. Always." Roger sighed, but didn't argue. He'd tried before and learned that Danny was as stubborn as his honey badger was fierce. The man left some food packets and walked away, his shoulders slumped under invisible weight. The next morning came too fast. Danny was helping sort salvage in the cargo bay when the alarms chimed. Not emergency alarms, just the standard docking sequence. Through the grimy viewport, he could see the Authority ship. It was clean and white and looked completely out of place next to their rusty station. Scraps sensed Danny's tension and stayed close, his muscular body pressed against the boy's leg. Together, they watched as the airlock cycled open. The inspection team wore matching gray uniforms that had never seen real work. Leading them was the tallest alien Danny had ever seen in person. Inspector Quillnox looked like someone had stretched a praying mantis to the size of a grown man and given it too many joints. His triangular head swiveled on a thin neck, compound eyes taking in everything at once. Behind him came 6 more aliens, different species Danny didn't recognize. They carried data pads and scanning equipment, already making notes before they'd taken 10 steps into the station. "Administrator Hayes," Quillnox said through his translator device. His real voice sounded like clicking glass. "We are here to conduct standard welfare evaluation. All personnel will comply with inspection protocols." Roger met them in the main corridor, putting on his professional voice. "Welcome to Red Rock Station. We're a small operation, but we follow regulations." "We shall determine that," Quillnox replied. He gestured to his team, and they spread out through the station like insects through a corpse. Danny tried to slip away to the maintenance section, but one of the inspectors spotted him. The alien was short and round, covered in blue fur, with 4 arms that moved independently. It beeped something into its datapad. "Unaccompanied minor detected," the translator announced, requesting supervisor presence. Quillnox's head rotated toward Danny with mechanical precision. Those compound eyes focused, and Danny felt like he was being examined under a microscope. Then the inspector's gaze dropped to Scraps. For a long moment, nobody moved. Scraps stared back at the alien with that fearless intensity that honey badgers were famous for. His lips pulled back slightly, showing teeth designed for breaking bones. "What is that creature?" Quillnox demanded. "That's Scraps," Danny said, keeping his voice steady even though his heart hammered. "He's mine. Unauthorized biological specimen. Class 4 predator by galactic standards." Quillnox's mandibles clicked together rapidly. "This is a severe violation of colony safety protocols." Roger appeared, slightly out of breath. "Inspector, that animal is registered as an emotional support companion. The boy lost his parents and irrelevant," Quillnox interrupted. He gestured to 2 of his security team. "The creature will be confiscated immediately." It will be transported to proper containment facilities for evaluation. No, Danny shouted. He dropped to his knees and wrapped both arms around Scraps. The honey badger pressed against him, understanding that something bad was happening. Boy, you will release the animal. Quillnox moved closer, towering over them both. This is not negotiable. Your administrator has no authority to override galactic welfare standards. Please, Roger tried again. Can't we discuss this? File an appeal. The animal is dangerous. Observe its aggressive posture. It has already demonstrated threat behavior toward my person. Quillnox motioned to his security team. Remove it. Use appropriate force if necessary. The two security guards approached. They were built like walking boulders, with gray skin and too many fingers. One of them carried what looked like a shock rod. The other held a capture net that glowed with energy fields. Danny held tighter. Scraps began to growl, a low rumbling that vibrated through the boy's chest. It was the same sound he made before attacking the maintenance robots that got too close. Danny, let him go, Roger said quietly. We'll sort this out, I promise. But Danny knew better. Once the authority took something, it never came back. His mother had told him stories about colonies that lost everything to inspectors who didn't understand how things really worked out here on the edge of nowhere. Last warning, Quillnox said. Release the animal or you will both be removed. Danny looked up at the towering alien. Then he looked at Roger, whose face showed he was helpless to stop this. Finally, he looked down at Scraps, who gazed back with absolute trust. No, Danny whispered. Quillnox made a sharp clicking sound. The security guards moved forward. That's when Scraps exploded into action. The first security guard never saw it coming. Scraps launched himself like a furry missile, claws extended and jaws open. The honey badger hit the alien's leg and climbed up his body faster than anyone could react. His teeth found the soft joint between armor plates and bit down hard. Purple blood sprayed across the corridor floor. The guard screamed in a language the translator couldn't process fast enough. He swung his shock rod wildly, trying to dislodge the 20-pound ball of rage attached to his torso. The rod connected with Scraps, and electricity crackled through the air. Scraps barely flinched. Honey badgers had thick skin and a pain tolerance that made them almost impossible to stop. He released his bite only to latch onto a different spot, his claws raking across the guard's face. The second guard fired his capture net. The glowing mesh spread through the air, but Scraps dropped from his target at the last second. The net wrapped around the first guard instead, the energy field making him convulse and collapse. Danny scrambled backward as chaos erupted. The other inspection team members were shouting into their communicators. Roger was yelling something, but nobody listened. Quillnox stood perfectly still, his compound eyes tracking every movement Scraps made. Subdue that animal immediately, Quillnox ordered, his translator voice cutting through the noise with mechanical calm. Authorization granted for lethal force if necessary. 3 more security personnel rushed in from the docking bay. They carried larger weapons, serious equipment meant for dangerous situations. One of them aimed what looked like a pulse rifle at Scraps. No. Danny threw himself between them. Don't shoot him. Roger grabbed Danny and pulled him back. Stay down. Scraps dodged the first pulse blast, which scorched a hole in the wall behind him. He zigzagged across the corridor, moving too fast and too unpredictably for the guards to track. Another blast missed. Then another. The honey badger had learned to hunt in the African wilderness where everything wanted to kill him. These aliens were slow and clumsy by comparison, but they were also numerous and well-armed. Eventually, one of the pulse blasts clipped Scraps' rear leg. He tumbled and rolled, making a sound that broke Danny's heart. The boy screamed and fought against Roger's grip. Before Scraps could recover, 2 guards pinned him with long poles that had electric prongs on the ends. The honey badger thrashed and snarled, his claws gouging chunks out of the metal floor. His teeth caught one of the poles and crushed it, but more guards arrived with a reinforced containment box. They forced Scraps into the box using shock prods and nets. It took 6 of them working together, and 2 more ended up injured before the lid finally sealed. Inside the box, Scraps threw himself against the walls hard enough to make the whole thing shake. His rage-filled screams echoed through the corridor. Danny finally broke free from Roger's arms. He ran toward the box, tears streaming down his face. "Let him out. You're hurting him." One of the guards moved to block Danny, but the boy was already past him. Danny's small fist pounded against the containment box. "Scraps, I'm here. I'm here." Inside, the sounds changed. Scraps recognized Danny's voice. His screams turned to desperate whines, and the thuds against the walls became more frantic. Quillnox approached, stepping carefully over the purple blood on the floor. He looked down at Danny with those alien compound eyes that showed no emotion the boy could recognize. "Remove the child," Quillnox said. Two security guards grabbed Danny's arms. He kicked and twisted and tried every escape technique he'd learned from watching Scraps fight. His teeth found one guard's arm and bit down as hard as he could. The guard howled and released him. Danny charged straight at Quillnox. He was 8 years old and weighed maybe 60 pounds, but rage made him fearless. His fist connected with the inspector's midsection, right where the segmented body plates met. Quillnox staggered backward, making clicking noises of surprise. More hands grabbed Danny. They lifted him off the ground, even as he continued fighting. One of his wild kicks caught Quillnox in the face, splitting one of the compound eyes. Purple blood dripped down the inspector's triangular head. "Restrain him properly." Quillnox's translator voice cracked with static. They forced Danny's arms behind his back and locked them with restraints that glowed with the same energy as the capture nets. The boy kept struggling until one of the guards pressed something against his neck. Cold spread through Danny's body, and his muscles went weak. "The child is clearly feral," Quillnox announced to Roger and the gathered crowd of station personnel who had come to watch. "He has been raised without proper guidance in the company of a dangerous predator. Both require immediate intervention and rehabilitation." "You can't take him," Roger said, his voice shaking. "He's a human child under my care." "You have no authority." "I have complete authority under Galactic Welfare Statute 447B, Quillnox interrupted. He touched the blood on his face, examining it on his fingers. "This child is a danger to himself and others. He will be transported to an authority rehabilitation facility along with the animal. Proper socialization protocols will be implemented." "I'm filing an official protest," Roger shouted. "Earth Command will hear about this. File whatever you wish. Your protest will be processed in standard time frame." Quillnox turned away, which is approximately 6 months. Danny tried to scream, but the sedative made his voice come out as a weak moan. They carried him toward the docking bay while other guards pushed the containment box on a hovering platform. Inside, Scraps continued to fight, the box rocking back and forth. Roger followed them to the airlock, still arguing, still making legal threats that everyone knew were meaningless. Red Rock Station was 3 months from the nearest Earth Command outpost. By the time any message reached them and they sent a response, Danny and Scraps would be long gone. The last thing Danny saw before they carried him onto the authority ship was Roger's face. The man was crying, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Behind him, the other station personnel watched in silence. They were miners and engineers and maintenance workers who knew how to survive in space, but none of them knew how to fight bureaucracy backed by security teams. The airlock sealed. The authority ship detached from Red Rock Station with a hiss of releasing pressure. Through the sedative fog, Danny heard Scraps screaming for him several decks away. The sound got fainter as they carried him deeper into the ship. They put Danny in a small white room with nothing but a bed and a toilet. The walls were smooth and featureless. The door had no handle on the inside. He lay on the bed, his arms still restrained, and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in this ship, Scraps was alone and scared. Danny had promised his mother he would always take care of the honey badger. He had failed. The ship's engines hummed as they jumped to hyperspace. Danny closed his eyes and listened for any sound of Scraps, but the walls were too thick. They had taken everything from him. Again, 3 weeks in hyperspace felt like 3 years. Danny counted the meals they brought him. 63 trays of food that tasted like paste and smelled like nothing. The white room never changed. The lights never went off. He had no idea if it was day or night, or if those words even meant anything anymore. They finally let him out of the restraints after the first week. His shoulders ached, and his wrists had marks from the energy cuffs. A medical drone visited twice daily to scan him and inject vitamins. It never spoke and ignored his questions. Sometimes, late in the sleep cycle, Danny pressed his ear against the wall. If he stayed very quiet, he could almost convince himself he heard scraps somewhere in the ship. But it might have been just the engines or the life support systems. He chose to believe it was scraps anyway. The ship dropped out of hyperspace without warning. Danny felt the change in his stomach, a lurching sensation that made him grip the bed. Through the small viewport that he discovered could actually open, he saw something massive. Holding Station 7 hung in orbit around a gas giant. The station was 10 times bigger than Red Rock, all sharp angles and gleaming metal. Docking ports covered its surface like insects on a corpse. Ships came and went constantly, dozens of them, all authority white. They came for Danny an hour later. 2 guards he hadn't seen before escorted him through corridors that went on forever. Everything was clean and organized and dead inside. Workers passed by without looking at him. Everyone moved with purpose, but no passion. The processing center looked like a medical bay designed by someone who'd never felt pain. Danny was scanned, photographed, and cataloged. They took samples of his blood and hair. A female alien with too many eyes asked him questions in a bored voice. Name? Danny Wright. 8. Earth Standard. Reason for detainment. I wouldn't let you steal my friend. The alien made a note without reacting to his anger. Subject displays continued aggressive socialization patterns. Recommend extended behavioral modification therapy. They gave him gray clothes that matched what the other detainees wore. Then the guards walked him deeper into the station, through sections labeled with numbers and letters that meant nothing to him. Finally, they reached a long hallway with doors on both sides. Each door had a small window. Danny's new cell was bigger than the one on the ship. It had a real bed, a desk, and a bathroom with a door. The viewport showed the gas giant below, orange and red clouds swirling in eternal storms. It was beautiful and completely wrong. Mealtimes are at 0600, 1200, and 1800 station time, one guard said. Recreation period is 1400 to 1500. Follow instructions and you will not be harmed. They left him alone. Danny sat on the bed and tried not to cry. He failed. The next morning, they woke him with a chime that wouldn't stop until he got up. Breakfast came through a slot in the door. More paste, this time blue instead of gray. He ate because his mother had taught him that surviving meant eating even when you didn't want T-1400. The door unlocked. Danny stepped into the corridor carefully. Other doors had opened too. Children emerged, all different species, all wearing gray. They moved toward a common area at the end of the hall. The recreation room had tables, chairs, and windows overlooking space. Danny saw humans here, maybe a dozen among the 50 or so kids. Most sat alone. Nobody seemed to talk much. A girl approached him. She was his age, maybe younger, with blue skin and hair that moved like it was underwater. Her eyes were too large for her face, but somehow that made her look kind. "You knew," she said. Her translator was better than most, almost no static. "Omidida." "Danny, what did they take from you?" It wasn't really a question. Everyone here had lost something. My honey badger. Scraps. Saying the name hurt. "You, my shimmerfly." She was just a baby. Lyra sat down at an empty table and Danny joined her. That was 6 months ago. 6 months. Danny felt sick. Where is she now? The xenobiology wing. That's where they keep all the animals they confiscate. Lyra pointed toward a section of the station visible through the window. That tall tower with the green lights. They study them there. Study them how? Lyra looked away. They say it's for science, learning about biology and behavior. But my shimmerfly was sick the last time I saw her. They don't take good care of them. Danny's hands clenched into fists. I need to get to that wing. You can't. It's restricted. Only researchers and high-level staff. Lyra leaned closer, lowering her voice. But I've been mapping the station. Guard patterns, shift changes, maintenance schedules. I was going to try to escape, but I got too scared. Why would you be scared? Danny asked. Because if they catch you trying to escape, they put you in isolation. Some kids go in there and don't come back the same. Lyra's hair stopped moving for a moment. But maybe with two of us. Before Danny could answer, the door opened. A new alien entered, this one shaped like a slug, but the size of a human adult. It wore a white coat and carried a data pad. Several guards followed. Danny Wright, the slug said through its translator. I'm Dr. Powell, head of behavioral research. Come with me, please. It wasn't really a request. Danny stood and followed, glancing back at Lyra. She gave him a small nod that might have been encouragement or might have been goodbye, doctor. Powell led him to an examination room. The walls here were covered in screens showing graphs and data Danny didn't understand. A medical chair sat in the center, the kind with straps. Sit, Dr. Powell said. Danny sat. The straps remained open. I have been reviewing your case with great interest, Dr. Powell continued. He moved around the room slowly, his body leaving a trail of moisture. The bond between human children and Earth animals is not well documented in our research, especially with predator species. When can I see Scraps? Danny asked. The honey badger. Yes. Dr. Powell pulled up images on one of the screens. Danny's breath caught. There was Scraps in a small cage, pacing back and forth. He looked thinner. The specimen has been difficult. It has injured 3 of my researchers and destroyed 2 containment units. Remarkable aggression for something so small. He's scared. He doesn't understand where he is. Perhaps. Or perhaps the creature is simply violent by nature. Dr. Powell turned to face Danny directly. I propose an experiment. We reunite you with the animal in a controlled environment. I observe the interaction. This will provide valuable data on human bonding mechanisms. You want to study us like lab rats, Danny said. I want to understand. Is that not what science is? Dr. Powell gestured, and the screens changed to show a large circular room. Tomorrow, you and the honey badger will be placed in our observation arena. If your bond is genuine, this should reduce the creature's stress levels. If not, we will know that separation is the appropriate course. Danny wanted to refuse. He wanted to fight, but this might be his only chance to see Scraps again. Okay, he said quietly. Excellent. Dr. Powell made notes on his pad. Guard will retrieve you at 0900. I suggest you rest well tonight. Tomorrow will be very educational for us both. They returned Danny to his cell. He lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in this massive station, Scraps was alone in a cage. Tomorrow they would see each other again. And maybe, just maybe, Danny could figure out how to get them both out of here. Through the viewport, the gas giant turned slowly, its storms never ending and never changing. The observation arena was bigger than Danny expected. Circular walls rose 30 feet high, smooth metal with no handholds. Above, windows lined the upper level where researchers could watch safely. Bright lights made everything too visible, too exposed. Danny stood in the center, turning slowly to take it all in. Subject Danny, right in position. Dr. Powell's voice echoed from hidden speakers. Releasing specimen now. A panel opened on the opposite side of the arena. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Scraps burst through like he'd been shot from a cannon. The honey badger looked different. Thinner, with patches of fur missing where medical equipment had been attached. One of his ears was torn, but his eyes were the same, dark and fierce, and absolutely focused on finding threats. Then he saw Danny. Scraps made a sound Danny had never heard before. Part whine, part chirp, all desperation. The honey badger ran across the arena floor, his claws clicking on metal. Danny dropped to his knees, and Scraps hit him hard enough to knock him backward. 20 pounds of honey badger climbed onto Danny's chest and pressed against his face. Scraps licked his cheeks and made those strange sounds over and over. His whole body vibrated with emotion. Danny wrapped both arms around him and felt hot tears on his face. Scraps, Scraps, I'm here. I'm so sorry. Danny buried his face in the honey badger's fur. He smelled wrong like chemicals and fear, but it was still Scraps. I'm so sorry they took you. Above them, Dr. Powell narrated observations into his recorder. Initial reunion shows extreme emotional response for both subjects. Physical contact maintained for 47 seconds. Heart rate elevation detected in both organisms. Fascinating. Danny ignored the voice. He ran his hands over Scraps carefully, checking for injuries. The honey badger allowed this inspection, something he rarely permitted even from Danny. There were burns on his back legs from shock prods, needle marks in his shoulders, a small cut near his eye that hadn't healed properly. "What did they do to you?" Danny whispered. Scraps responded by pressing closer, his claws kneading Danny's shirt. The message was clear. "Doesn't matter now. Together again." Beginning controlled stress tests, Dr. Palom announced. Test 1. Auditory stimulus. A sound blasted through the arena, deep and rumbling, like thunder mixed with a roar. Scraps immediately shifted into defensive posture, placing himself between Danny and the source of the sound. His lips pulled back, showing teeth. Danny put a hand on Scraps' back. "It's okay. Not real." The sound grew louder. Scraps growled but stayed put, trusting Danny's judgment over his instincts. When the sound finally stopped, the honey badger relaxed slightly but remained alert. Interesting. The human's presence moderates the specimen's aggressive response. Dr. Palom made more notes. Test 2. Physical barrier. A wall rose from the floor between Danny and Scraps. It was clear material, like thick glass, but it split them onto opposite sides of the arena. Scraps immediately attacked it, clawing and biting. The material didn't even scratch. "Scraps, stop. You'll hurt yourself." Danny pressed his hands against the barrier from his side. The honey badger kept attacking for another 30 seconds before he realized it was pointless. He sat down hard, staring at Danny through the clear wall. His sides heaved with exhaustion and frustration. Test 3. Food deprivation scenario. A bowl appeared on Danny's side. It was full of fresh meat, the first real food Danny had seen since Red Rock Station. His stomach growled. On Scraps' side, nothing appeared. Go ahead, Danny, right," Dr. Palom said. "Eat. Your companion has already been fed today." Danny looked at the meat, then at Scraps. The honey badger watched him with those dark eyes. Danny picked up the entire bowl and threw it as hard as he could at the observation windows above. It bounced off harmlessly, but the message was clear. Fascinating. Subject prioritizes bond over personal need. More notes. Test 4. Simulated predator threat. Small drones descended from a ceiling. They were shaped like insects, but bigger, with mechanical legs and glowing eyes. 6 of them surrounded Danny and Scraps, still separated by the barrier. The drones made clicking sounds and moved closer. Scraps went berserk. He threw himself at the barrier repeatedly, trying to reach Danny. Blood appeared on his nose from the impacts, but he didn't stop. Danny kicked at the drones near him. "Get away from him. Stop this test." The drones advanced. One of them extended a pincer toward Danny. He grabbed it and pulled hard, throwing the machine off balance. Another drone touched his shoulder and delivered a shock. Not enough to hurt badly, but enough to make him yell. That's when Scraps broke through. Nobody had expected it. The barrier was rated for twice the force a creature his size could generate. But honey badgers didn't care about ratings or expectations. Scraps hit the same spot over and over until a crack appeared. Then he focused all his rage on that weakness until the barrier shattered. He crossed the arena in 2 seconds. The first drone died under his claws. The second lost its legs. Scraps moved like a whirlwind of teeth and fury, destroying every drone that had threatened Danny. The boy watched in awe as his friend eliminated 6 targets in under a minute. When the last drone fell sparking to the floor, Scraps returned to Danny's side. He sat down and looked up at the observation windows, making a chattering sound that clearly meant "Come down here and try that yourselves." The arena went silent except for their breathing. Then alarms started blaring. "Quarantine breach in Xenobiology Wing," an automated voice announced. "Specimen 447 Alpha has escaped containment. All personnel evacuate to designated safe zones." This is not a drill. Above them, Danny saw researchers scrambling away from the observation windows. Emergency lights flashed red. Through the chaos, he spotted something that made his heart race. The shield that had covered the observation area was retracting. During emergencies, everything opened to allow evacuation. Scraps, Danny said quietly. We need to go. Right now. The honey badger understood. He moved toward the wall where panels had opened during the evacuation. Danny followed, staying low. They could hear screaming from other parts of the station. Something was tearing through the facility, and it sounded big. They reached a maintenance corridor just as the arena door sealed behind them. The corridor was empty, everyone running toward escape pods or shelters. Danny had no idea where he was going. He just knew he couldn't stay in that arena. Lyra appeared around a corner, breathing hard. Danny, I saw what happened on the security feeds. The whole station is going crazy. What escape? Danny asked. Something from the restricted levels. They wouldn't even tell us what it was. Lyra looked at Scraps warily. That's your honey badger? Yeah, this is Scraps. Danny put a hand on the honey badger's head. Can you get us to the xenobiology wing? Why would we go there? We should head for the escape pods, because there are other animals there. Other kids' companions. Danny met her eyes. We can't leave them. Lyra stared at him like he was insane. Then she looked at Scraps, who sat patiently waiting for Danny to decide their next move. Something changed in her expression. Okay, she said, but we have to hurry. The evacuation will seal all the sections soon. Once that happens, we're trapped wherever we are. She led them through corridors Danny had never seen. They passed labs and storage rooms and quarters for researchers. Everything was abandoned in the rush to evacuate. Twice they heard something massive moving parallel to their path, its footsteps shaking the walls. The xenobiology wing is through that junction, Lyra pointed ahead. But there's a security checkpoint. I don't know if. She stopped talking because Quillnox stepped into view. The inspector looked worse than when Danny had last seen him. Bandages covered parts of his face, and one arm hung useless. But he still carried authority in his posture and contempt in his alien eyes. Where do you think you're going, child? Quillnox demanded. Quillnox blocked the corridor with his tall frame, damaged but still dangerous. Behind him, the security checkpoint doors were sealed tight. His good hand held a shock baton that hummed with energy. The station is evacuating, Danny said, keeping his voice steady. You should go too. I should let you wander freely during a crisis. Allow you to cause more damage. Quillnox's mandibles clicked. You and that creature have cost me my career. I will not permit you to. A roar interrupted him. It came from somewhere close, shaking dust from the ceiling. The sound was wrong, too deep and loud to come from any animal Danny knew. Whatever had escaped was hunting through the station. Inspector, we don't have time for this, Lyra pleaded. That thing will kill all of us. Then we die following protocol. Quillnox raised his baton. You will return to your cells immediately. Scraps growled. Danny put a hand on him, but the honey badger was done being patient. His muscles tensed, ready to fight. The wall exploded. Metal panels tore away like paper. Something massive pushed through, all teeth and scales and rage. It stood 12 feet tall on 4 legs, with a mouth big enough to swallow Danny whole. Its eyes were yellow and hungry. This was specimen 447 Alpha, the thing nightmares were made of. Quillnox turned and fired his baton. The electrical charge hit the creature's shoulder and did absolutely nothing. The inspector realized his mistake too late. A claw the size of a combat knife swept out and connected with Quillnox's chest. The impact threw him 15 feet down the corridor. The creature focused on Danny and Lyra. Its lips pulled back, showing rows of teeth. Scraps positioned himself between them and it, making himself look bigger. The honey badger weighed 20 pounds. The predator weighed at least 2 tons. The size difference didn't seem to matter to Scraps. Run, Danny whispered. Lyra, run to the checkpoint. What about you? Just go. Lyra ran. The creature's head tracked her movement, and it started to follow. Scraps launched himself at its face, claws extended. The honey badger landed on the predator's snout and immediately started tearing. The creature roared and shook its head violently, but Scraps held on. Danny didn't run. He ran to Quillnox. The inspector was still alive, but bleeding purple blood from deep cuts across his torso. His compound eyes focused on Danny with confusion. Why? Quilnox managed to say. Because leaving people to die is what you do, not what I do. Danny grabbed the inspector's good arm and pulled. Quilnox was twice his size, but fear gave Danny strength he didn't know he had. Behind them, Scraps dropped from the creature's face and rolled away as massive jaws snapped shut where he'd been. The honey badger darted between the predator's legs, staying mobile, keeping it confused. But he was tiring, and the creature was learning his patterns. Danny dragged Quilnox toward the checkpoint where Lyra was working on the control panel. The inspector's weight made Danny's arm scream, but he didn't stop. Purple blood left a trail on the floor. Danny, hurry. Lyra's hands flew over the controls. I almost have it. The creature finally caught Scraps. One massive paw pinned the honey badger to the floor. Scraps twisted and bit, his teeth finding soft tissue between scales. The creature howled and lifted its paw. Scraps rolled away, but not fast enough. Claws raked across his side, drawing blood. No. Danny dropped Quilnox and ran back. He picked up a piece of debris from the broken wall and threw it at the creature's head. Hey, over here. The yellow eyes focused on him. The predator took a step forward, then another. Its mouth opened wide. Get to the checkpoint, Danny. Lyra screamed. Danny backed away slowly, keeping the creature's attention. Scraps was hurt but alive, limping towards safety. That was all that mattered. The predator stalked closer, taking its time now. It knew its prey couldn't escape. A shock baton flew through the air and struck the creature's eye. Quilnox had thrown it with his good arm. The predator roared and turned toward this new threat. Quilnox lay on the floor, defenseless and bleeding, but his mandibles moved in what might have been satisfaction. The checkpoint doors opened. Danny now, Lyra shouted. Danny grabbed Quilnox again and pulled with everything he had. The inspector helped as much as he could, his legs pushing weakly. Scraps appeared beside them, blood matting his fur, and grabbed Quilnox's uniform his teeth to help pull. The creature charged. They fell through the checkpoint doors together. Lyra slammed her hand on the emergency seal. The doors closed just as claws scraped against the other side. The creature's roar of frustration shook the walls, but the doors held. For a long moment, nobody moved. They lay in a heap on the floor, breathing hard. Danny could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. Scraps crawled onto his chest, and Danny held him carefully, avoiding the wounds on his side. You saved me, Quilnox said quietly. His translator voice was weak. After everything I did to you. Yeah, well, Danny didn't look at him. My mom taught me that being human means helping people even when they don't deserve it. Quilnox made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. I did not understand humans. I thought your bonds with animals were primitive, irrational. They're real, Danny said simply. That's all that matters. Lyra was already at another control panel. The xenobiology wing is through this section, but we need to move fast. The evacuation will seal everything in 10 minutes. Danny helped Quilnox sit up. The inspector's injuries were serious, but not immediately fatal. Can you walk? I can try. They moved through the checkpoint into a new corridor. This one had windows showing the containment labs. Rows and rows of cages, each holding a confiscated animal. Some Danny recognized from Earth. Others were completely alien. All of them looked scared and sick. There, Lyra pointed to a control station. That terminal controls all the containment units. If I can access it, I can open everything at once. Won't that release dangerous animals? Quilnox asked. Good, Danny said coldly. Maybe they'll find the people who hurt them. Lyra worked at the terminal. Her fingers moved across the interface with practiced skill. Come on. I learned the system by watching the guards, but there. Every cage in the xenobiology wing opened simultaneously. Animals poured into the corridors. Earth dogs and cats. Alien creatures that looked like floating jellyfish or six-legged wolves. A shimmer fly broke free and immediately flew to Lyra, landing on her shoulder. She cried and laughed at the same time, touching its delicate wings. We need to reach the evacuation bay, Danny said. All of us, kids and animals. The bay is 4 sections away. Quilnox pulled up a station map on his personal device. Through main research, past medical, around security central. Then that's where we go. Danny adjusted his grip on Scraps. The honey badger's breathing was labored but steady. "Everyone who can walk, follow me." They emerged into a corridor full of freed children and their companions. Maybe 30 kids total, all different species. They looked at Danny with hope and fear mixed together. He was 8 years old and probably shouldn't be leading anyone. But nobody else was stepping up. "The evacuation bay is this way," Danny announced, pointing where Quillnox had indicated. "Stay together. Help anyone who falls behind. We're all getting out of here." They moved as a group through the chaos. Emergency systems shrieked warnings. Sealed doors forced them to take detours. Once they heard Specimen 447 Alpha destroying something several sections away, but it didn't find them. The evacuation bay appeared ahead, a massive space filled with escape pods. Most were already gone, taken by researchers and guards. But at least 20 remained, more than enough for everyone. Danny helped load children into pods. 4 or 5 kids per pod, along with their animals. Lyra worked the launching controls, sending each pod toward the planet below. Quillnox sat against a wall, growing weaker. "I will file a report when we reach safety about what I found here, what the Provision Authority was really doing." "Good," Danny said. He sealed another pod and watched it launch. Someone needs to tell the truth. The last pod had space for 3 more. Danny, Lyra, and Quillnox. Scraps lay in Danny's arms, his eyes closed but still breathing. The honey badger had earned his rest. They strapped in, and Lyra initiated the launch sequence. Through the viewport, Danny watched Holding Station 7 grow smaller. Parts of it were on fire now. The structure was failing. "We did it," Lyra said softly. "We actually did it." Danny held Scraps closer and allowed himself to believe they might survive this after all. The escape pod hit atmosphere hard. Danny gripped his seat as they bounced and shook through entry burn. Beside him, Lyra held her shimmer fly protected against her chest. Quillnox was strapped in tight, unconscious but stable. Scraps lay in Danny's lap, his breathing shallow. Deploying chutes, Lyra called out over the roar of entry. "Brace!" The pod jerked upward as parachutes caught air. Their descent slowed to something survivable. Through the viewport, Danny saw a planet below, green and blue and brown, with white clouds scattered across continents. It looked almost like Earth. They landed in water. The pod bobbed on the surface of a vast ocean, then began moving towards shore on automatic navigation. Within an hour, they reached a beach of white sand. The pod's door opened with a hiss. Danny stepped out on solid ground for the first time in weeks. The air was warm and smelled like salt and growing things. Other pods were scattered along the beach, children and animals emerging into sunlight. Everyone looked dazed but alive. Medical ships arrived within hours. They came from the local colony on this planet, alerted by the pod's distress signals. Doctors and volunteers swarmed the beach, treating injuries and offering food and water. A human medic took one look at Scraps and immediately started working on his wounds. "He's tough," the medic said, cleaning the claw marks carefully. "I've never seen a honey badger before except in files. They really are as fierce as the stories say." "He's my friend," Danny corrected. "And yeah, he is." Over the next week, the full story came out. Quillnox kept his word and filed a detailed report from his hospital bed. Other children added their testimonies. Lyra showed investigators the maps she'd made, the patterns she'd documented. Evidence piled up until even the Galactic Council couldn't ignore it. Holding Station 7 had been a front. The Provision Authority wasn't protecting confiscated animals. They were selling them to private collectors and research facilities. Hundreds of species, thousands of individual creatures, all trafficked across the galaxy. The children were collateral damage, taken because they witnessed or protested the thefts. The news spread through every inhabited system. Public outrage forced immediate action. The Galactic Council dissolved the Provision Authority completely. Criminal charges were filed against everyone involved. Inspector Quillnox, despite his role in Danny's capture, received leniency for his cooperation. He was assigned to help build the new system that would replace the old one that a month later, Danny stood on Red Rock Station again. Roger Hayes met him at the airlock. tears running down his face. The administrator pulled Danny into a hug that lasted a long time. Scraps, still bandaged but healing, waited patiently for them to finish. "I thought I'd lost you," Roger said. "When I heard what happened at the station, when they said there were casualties, I thought, I'm okay." Danny interrupted. "We're okay." Roger looked down at Scraps. "I should have fought harder to keep you together. You did what you could. The system was broken." Danny scratched behind Scraps' ears. "But maybe it's getting fixed now." The Galactic Council held hearings. Danny was invited to testify. He stood before representatives from 100 worlds and told them about his mother, about Scraps, about what it meant to lose and then fight for family. His words were translated into languages he'd never heard, broadcast across civilized space. "My mom told me that honey badgers don't give up," Danny said to the assembled council members. "They fight even when they're outmatched, even when it seems impossible. That's what makes them special." He paused. "But humans are like that too. We fight for the things we love, even when powerful people say we can't, even when the rules say we should give up. We fight anyway." The council chambers were silent when he finished. Then one representative began clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire assembly was on their feet. 3 months after that, the Interspecies Companion Protection Act became law. Any being could designate a companion animal. These companions received protection under galactic law. Separating bonded pairs became illegal except in extreme circumstances. Inspection teams were reformed with new oversight and strict limitations on their power. Lyra and her Shimmerfly stayed on Red Rock Station. Roger Hayes started adoption paperwork for both Danny and Lyra. The small mining colony became something new, a community built on second chances. Other children from Holding Station 7 were returned to their families. Those without families found new ones. Danny sometimes thought about Dr. Palim and the researchers who had studied him and Scraps-like experiments. He wondered if they understood now. The bond between him and Scraps wasn't something you could measure with instruments or explain with data. It was real in a way that transcended science. 6 months after the escape, Danny gave a speech at the new Companion Protection Agency headquarters. Quilnox stood beside him on stage. The former inspector had changed, his rigid belief in protocol replaced by understanding that rules must serve beings, not the other way around. "They try to separate me from my honey badger," Danny said to the crowd of reporters and officials. "They thought it would be easy. Just another regulation enforced. Just another animal confiscated." He reached down and picked up Scraps, holding him carefully. That was their first mistake. They didn't understand that some bonds can't be broken by force or law or distance. They didn't understand that humans will fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Scraps looked out at the crowd with those dark, fearless eyes. A few people in the audience stepped back nervously. Danny smiled. "My mom used to say that honey badgers are nature's way of showing that size doesn't matter. Courage does. Heart does." Danny set Scraps down, and the honey badger sat beside him, perfectly calm. She was right, and now the whole galaxy knows it. The speech ended to thunderous applause. But Danny barely heard it. He was already thinking about getting back to Red Rock Station, to the caves he and Scraps explored together, to the life they were building. That evening, back home, Danny sat in the maintenance bay where this had all started. Scraps was beside him, healed now except for a few scars that made him look even more tough. Roger brought them dinner. Real food cooked in the station's small kitchen. "You know you're famous across half the galaxy now," Roger said, sitting down with them. "The human boy and his honey badger who took down a corrupt bureaucracy. I just wanted my friend back," Danny said simply. "I know. That's what makes it matter." Roger stood to leave, then paused. "Your mother would be proud of you. Both of you." After Roger left, Danny leaned against Scraps. The honey badger made that soft chittering sound that meant contentment. Through the viewport, stars shone in endless darkness. Somewhere out there, other children were safe with their companions because Danny had refused to give up. His mom had been right about a lot of things. About honey badgers not knowing how to quit. About standing up for what mattered even when you were scared. About family being more than just blood. Scraps fell asleep against Danny's leg, snoring softly. The sound made Danny smile. They'd been separated once and had torn apart a space station to find each other again. Nobody would ever make that mistake again. The dust still hung in the recycled air of Red Rock Station. The place was still barely holding together. But it was home, and home was worth fighting for. Danny had learned that lesson the hard way that he looked